Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all back to the second meeting to discuss water resources and conservation. My name is Malini Sims. I'm a principal planner with the town, and I'll be facilitating tonight's discussion. I am joined by Peter Abraham from the Water Utility Commission, or Utility Department. He's the director, as well as Renee Overa, who's a senior planner. Sorry, Peter, I won't give you a new job title in this meeting.
That's
All right, just quickly, I'll share a brief presentation and then we'll get right into the discussion tonight. Oops, excuse me. Go. So for tonight's discussion, our aim is to walk through the draft goals, policies, and actions. Now, these are derived from the information you all gave us at the last meeting, as well as the significant direction we received from residents over the past year and any legal requirements the 10-year plan must comply with. Now, I do want to emphasize the word drafts, as this really is the first attempt to capture everything, and these drafts will continue to be refined and sent back out to everyone for further wordsmithing and review as we continue through this process. Part of tonight's focus is, though, to make sure that they accurately capture everything that was previously said through resident guidance, but also make sure that they're clear and meets the intent of the discussions. Our aim with these drafts is to achieve consensus that they are headed in the right direction. So as a group, you define the word consensus during your kickoff meeting. And just as a reminder, it does, as you guys defined it, it's something that everyone can accept. This may mean that you don't agree with all of it 100%, but it is what's best for the community. Please keep this in mind as we proceed tonight. And just a quick overview of goals, policies, and actions. Reminder that the goals are our big picture, kind of what are we striving for or what's the desired result. The policies is the bridge between the goals and the actions. And then the actions are those more specific details that are giving this task that the town will implement to achieve those goals. And as you all pointed out a couple weeks ago, we do want to make sure that the goals, policies, and actions are broad enough to stay relevant for a 10-year time frame, but specific enough that it actually gets things done in the community. So that is kind of the balance and the needle we're trying to thread with these goals, policies, and actions. Again, please keep that in mind as well as we proceed this evening. Again, our main priority is to make sure that the plan honors what residents voiced over the past year. This was heard through a statistically representative survey. It was also aligns with what was mentioned at events as well as online through ovpathforward.com. So we did hear that people are concerned about water availability, especially for the next 10 years, as that relates to also the water supply and use of water resources. Wanting to make sure that water conservation is a high priority in terms of community awareness and programs for that. And then reducing the use of potable or drinking water. And there are various ways to reduce that through having requirements for new development, but also looking at reducing irrigation for golf courses or landscaping. And then lastly, there was a priority to expand the use of reclaimed water. And then lastly, before we start our discussion, I just want to remind folks of the ground rules that everyone has accepted. I need everyone's help to make sure that this meeting is efficient and productive. We have, as always, a lot to get through, so please make sure you're sticking to the category at hand. We will get through everything this evening and do want to make sure we get all of your comments. So we will be using the whiteboard this evening. Just as a refresher, you can use the navigation menu in the lower right-hand screen to zoom out, zoom in, or use the hand to adjust your view. I also put the draft goals, policies, and actions in the chat. So if you'd like, you can click on that link and use your own device to follow along this evening. All right, so I'm going to launch the whiteboard. I do ask if you're able to have your camera on and raise your virtual hand to speak. However, you may also use the chat this evening, and Renee will make sure we get your comment on the whiteboard. The most important thing is that we're getting all of your feedback this evening. All right, so you should now be able to see the whiteboard. I know you can't really read it yet. I will zoom in here in a moment, but just a quick overview of what we're going to discuss tonight. We're going to start in our purple column. That's more of our higher level water planning goals, policies, and actions. So I moved that to the front because it seemed like a couple weeks ago, folks were focused more on water policy and just in general water planning. Then we'll move into more of the specifics on how we do that with our blue column. That's where we'll talk about ways to reduce potable water use, but also increase water conservation. And then we'll wrap up with our green column, which is the outreach aspect and education focus for water conservation. And then lastly, I do want to check in with this group on that draft guiding principle to make sure that it captures what residents said. So with that, I'm going to move us over to the purple column. If you're using the print or the link in the chat or it was emailed, you'll need to go to the last page, which has the same purple column. Okay, so when it came to water policies, rates, what we did here was, making sure we're working with the state and other jurisdictions, as there will be statewide policies coming down with regards to water use, focusing on our biggest water users first, and then looking at individual. When it came to reclaimed water, many of you did state that in the future, water is water. There won't be such a big distinction between both. And then we did also get a comment that with regards to water rates, it's not exactly always the rate that you're paying, but it's the actual cost of the water that may not be encouraging folks to conserve water. So looking at that, we are going to start with goal R and policy R1, policy R2, and the actions beneath it. If you've been with us for a while in the previous goals, policies, and action meeting, you'll see that the format is a little bit different, but the actions are aimed to tie to what we heard and what residents said over the past year. So I want to give everyone a moment to look through this, and then please raise your hand if you think, if anything's missed in terms of ways to capture what residents said. If anything needs clarification also. Randy?
In the purple on the third dot, it says fix the biggest users first, then focus on individuals. What do we mean by fix?
So, and anybody who was on the call a couple of weeks ago, please also feel free to chime in. My recollection, though, was it was focused on look at the biggest water users first to try to work with them to reduce their water use. So like golf courses, for instance, and then go to more of the individual. So a lot of the conversation was doing things at an individual homeowner level is great and it helps, but the biggest impact would be looking at those bigger water users. And so we tried to capture that in action R1.1.
I understand that. That's pretty clear. It's just the word fix that I don't understand.
Yeah, so that was the wording that was used from this group, but to your point, it wouldn't be the wording that we would want to use probably in the actual action.
Thank you.
Good question. And Rose, I don't know if you still had a comment or if you meant to put your hand down.
I'm sorry, I was going to say maybe target the biggest users first. something like that. Or approach the biggest users first.
Okay, and are you thinking that using that instead of work with?
Instead of the word
Sure.
fix.
Sure. So I do want to try to help to clarify for folks where the wording in the purple, although it's important, that's more of a summary of what we heard last time. So that's not what will be in the plan. What will be in the plan is the kind of the yellow, the goals, policies, and actions in yellow. We can definitely update the wording in purple if it's misrepresenting you as a group, but what will be in the plan is under the number 2. Keith?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I missed the last meeting, so I apologize, but maybe it's coming up, but is there any policies that are in place or being put in place or considered for rainwater harvesting?
Yeah, Keith, so that will be, hold that thought. We'll definitely get to some rainwater harvesting ones in the next call, set.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Rosa?
I mean, I think if this is a high level goal, work with is okay. You know, the wording that you have is okay, because I mean, this is a conservation mindset, not a policy, correct? Like, we're not going to be setting policy. We're doing conservation as a effort to control water use. So I would say work with is in line with our current level, conservation level, because we're at a level where we're asking for voluntary reductions. So so if that's the goal of the plan, then I think this wording is good. The only thing that I would suggest is, and I don't know whether, I mean, I feel like it's somewhat captured in the feeling of what I heard in the last meeting, is maybe making it a little stronger. Like, you know, you want to work with the largest water users, but maybe also establish like some benchmarks or some goals for reduction. For example, you know, if we need to reduce turf irrigation, since we have so much turf, it would have to be in a way that maintains like the value of that property. So it might be like intermittent reductions or not irrigating over the summer or something like that. So maybe something that's just a little stronger than work with, although I think work with, if this is the highest level, that's fine. But maybe establish, you know, some measures that you know, do reduce that will, you know, reduce irrigation in the largest areas while maintaining, you know, property values and not, I don't just mean in the surrounding homeowners, I mean the value of the property that's being reduced, you know. So because this is a little, it's very high level, but it's also got no teeth in it in terms of like conservation, like what we will do in the next 10 years, because I foresee if we're going to keep all those golf courses, that we're going to have to do something to be able to keep them. And one of the things that I've heard is not irrigating all of them in the summer, maybe not irrigating one of the 2 in the summer, which would be a significant reduction in the reclaimed until reclaimed is all water, you know. And so anyway, I just think it does need to work with, but it might also need to establish reduction goals for large, you know, turf areas that maintain value while reducing water or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosa. And I did get your comments down so we can look at that one to make it a little bit more measurable. Cheryl?
Are we looking at all of these draft goals, or just are we still up in the top section?
So looking at all the goal R and all the policies in action under goal R.
Okay, okay, then I have a comment. And it would be actually under R22,
Okay.
educating the community about importance and use of reclaimed water. I think we have done a great job in this town of using our tap water to preserve our groundwater, et cetera. But unfortunately, most of the residents in this town do not follow this. All they see is that their water rate goes up every year, and they don't really take the time to educate themselves. So I do think that that is a really important thing to have in here. But until we get to the point that water is water, I would like to see something in this education line, and maybe it's too detailed, but we had a really good discussion the last time about how, yeah, we'll have enough water, but tap water is more expensive and we're going to have to pay more. And I kind of think if we put that out there to the public, that's one thing that would grab their attention. So I don't think we should, keep that a secret within our group. I think we should use that as an educational tool to get them to pay attention and really start looking at what their water usage is doing in terms of, the entire town. So just a thought.
Yeah, we can definitely expand the education component. Keith?
Yeah, I want to add on to that as well. It doesn't mention anything about local organizations coming in to do education. At least I don't see that. I think that would be important. There's several organizations within Tucson that are that could provide vast amount of education to Oro Valley. So.
Yeah, and we will, there is a action about partnerships. I know watershed management was discussed a lot in the last meeting, so we do have action about that. So I'll let you know when that comes up to make sure it's capturing what you were thinking as well.
All
Thanks,
right,
Keith.
thank you.
All right, any other thoughts on our this is our broadest, if you will, goals and policies and actions just related to water planning for the future? We will, again, as Rosa and some others pointed out, make some refinements to make sure they are more, they have some teeth to them to implement. Okay, not seeing any more hands, I'll move us along. So this next group, so this is where we did talk a fair amount. We spent our time here talking about ways to conserve water. We also did talk, so we talked about landscaping. We talked about rainwater harvesting in this area. Gray water use was brought up. Also use of reducing it on turf was used in terms of water. So looking at this one, I do want to point out that some of these comments even came from your guys' discussion in April, where you had water harvesting programs. So let's though focus maybe just on goal P, policy P1, and the actions under there. And then we'll go on. Oops, zoomed in too far. My apologies. So you'll see under P13, that one has been updated. That's based off of the comments we got from your group in April about, natural turf wasn't a very good descriptor. Just use the word natural grass so everybody knows what we're talking about. And also you guys gave some great comments of not wanting to encourage then artificial turf because that defeats some of the purpose. So we tried to make those edits in that one. And then the other ones focus on native plants and some of the other comments you had with regards to water features and irrigation. And again, we do have actions about partnerships to help with some of these later on. And since they're all showing on the screen, if we want to do goal P, policy P1 and policy P2 and all associated actions. Rosa?
So, P18, I still think that's one of the dumbest things. I just think it's dumb. Okay, because it doesn't address how much water is being used. And that's really the issue. Because in my opinion, as water becomes more scarce, something that allows you to have the experience of water is more important than something that utilizes an extreme amount of it. So like, I just think that it's just a dumb thing. And I was told that it was really largely symbolic. So I don't think that's under water efficiency. Water efficiency should, for example, there should be something that sets a guideline on how much water, discretionary water use, like on the commercial level and on the residential level, is within line of like what the town would like to see. Because I told you the example I used is I was being lampooned by an individual whose neighborhood used 50 times more water than mine did, because they had lawns and splash pad and a pool and endless amounts of ornamental trees and irrigation. And our community, not because we chose it, but because the developer installed it, a very large monument with a fountain in it. And our water use was 1/50th of that neighborhood's water use. So it shouldn't be the vessel. It should be the usage, because water is an experience, and people are going to have pools unless we prohibit pools, and we're not going to do that. So I think it's better in the zoning requirement should be updated to provide guidelines for what is an appropriate amount of discretionary water use on a residential and commercial property. That would be a more useful guideline, because it isn't the vessel, it's the amount of water. So I'm going to maintain until they kick me out of Oro Valley that that's the dumbest zoning provision and policy provision I've ever heard of. And it doesn't make any sense, because I'm living proof that, it gives permission, to waste water as long as you don't put it in a fountain. So that's my feeling on that one. I just think it's wrong-headed. And if your goal is to promote and increase water efficiency, then you need to come up with guidelines for how much water, discretionary water use, is acceptable in common areas in a community, in residential, backyards, and in commercial use. That way you have an expectation that, if met, meets the town's goals. So that's my feeling on that. I just think it's ridiculous, but you can ignore me if you want to.
Thanks, Rosa. Just to provide some context for everyone too. So right now we do restrict the amount of natural grass that can be in new developments. And so it's a percentage of a rec area can be natural turf. We also restrict, and this is one way also of restricting water use for commercial, and not having a bunch of fountains everywhere, but I do hear you. And maybe Peter could probably talk to it a little bit better, but I know in the town code, there are water conservation code that was adopted in 2021, where it does have some requirements where you're not supposed to use potable water, like what I recall seeing was like to hose off your driveway or other things like that, so you're not wasting water. So some of that's in there. I guess for the group is, right now, in P18, we use the word maintain because we already don't allow water fountains for non-residential development, common areas, or front yards. We don't tend to regulate people's backyards in general, because it's their backyard. But would like to hear some other comments, and then Peter, if you have anything to add about our current water conservation requirements in the town code, please feel free to chime in. Keith and then Cheryl.
Yeah, so under rainwater harvesting again, the things that are listed there are good to do, but I would really encourage us to add something in about encouraging people to actually install systems like this. They can be quite expensive. And like the city of Tucson, you get a rebate from Tucson Water for installing passive and active rainwater harvesting systems. And if we had more of an incentive available in Oro Valley, that would encourage people to actually install them versus trying to just pay all of it out of the pocket. So I think that would be a great thing to bring to the city to approve and provide some funding for.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cheryl.
So on P1, and I guess, one for sure. Is it the same list for both residential and commercial? Because I would think that maybe some of the commercial areas have the opportunity to put in larger trees than we should have in some of our front yards.
So the list is the same, and it's more for the subdivision level. The front yards it does narrow it down to the specific types of trees.
Okay.
But the
And then-
broader list is applicable to all new development.
Okay. And then for P13, I honestly think we need to put discourage planting of grass in that one as well as replacing grass. Because the marketplace came to mind when they wanted to do the 1 acre of grass that they wanted Oro Valley to continue to maintain and pay for. And I just think that it was a small area, but it would have cost us an awful lot had that gone through. So maybe discouraging it would help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is where we do have some restrictions on where you put natural grass, but we could definitely look at those, and they could, I'm sure, use another evaluation to update to make sure that they're not being used just for ornamental uses or. Okay, and then Rosa. Oh, and you're muted, Rosa.
The rainwater harvesting P14. Review and potentially update rainwater harvesting requirements. Do we have requirements right now
We do, yes.
for existing, for subdivisions and non-residential developments? I mean,
Yes.
is it for new developments?
So yes, it's for any new development has to submit a rainwater harvesting plan, and it's residential, and it's all new development has to do this.
So this is like any individual house or any new neighborhood, the developer would have to submit the plan?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so like front yards of like newer homes, you'll notice they usually the front yard has depression within them so that the water is being captured to help water those trees in the front yard. They also have to have basins throughout the development. Usually they're near the rec areas, the private rec areas, to also help capture water and reduce their water use for irrigation.
Wasn't aware of that. That's so, but it's not going to be, the goal isn't to go back and work with HOAs to rainwater harvest in other existing communities.
We could definitely add that as,
Because I mean, if we don't have that many new communities going in, I guess is my point. I mean, it's great, but like it would be better if there was maybe encourage, maybe not require, but that would really have a bigger impact, I think, if
Mhm.
because most of the water is used in landscaping. So if you can capture a lot of the rainwater, I think that would be a huge reduction in water use. Because I know myself, when I turn my irrigation system off, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, we could definitely work with them. To your point, we can't require folks to retroactively have to meet new requirements unless they're doing a lot of changes, but definitely can work with them to assist and encourage it.
Yeah, because as water becomes more scarce and I know we have a huge HOA and I know the VCA would maybe, promote anything you wanted them to promote, for people who are going to change up their landscaping or who are interested in reducing their water bill, because most of it does go to landscaping. So, yeah. So I would add that. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. And then Rose?
Yeah, on P14, I think you're talking about passive rainwater harvesting as opposed to actually capturing the rainfall into containers. So I think the word we need is passive rainwater harvesting in that one. And that's, I think that's P14.
So we actually, you're right, most of it's passive, but they can do active rainwater harvesting too. So actually the
Should we say both
marketplace,
then?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I just wondered if we should say both then,
Okay, yep.
passive and active.
Mhm.
And then the other question I have is natural ground. The word natural is kind of confusing, I think. I think I think what you're trying to say is replace artificial turf with, you're saying natural turf. And I think what we need to say is a native ground covers instead of natural ground covers, or native or xeric ground covers or something like that. I'm not sure what the word natural means there. And then as far as replacing grasses, do we have a rule as to what kind of grasses that people use? Are we using, blue grama? Are we using a native grass when or recommending that when people decide to put in turf?
So this one is actually to replace natural grass, not artificial grass, but replace natural grass with, and we can change the word in terms of instead of natural to native or something else, ground covers. So that would be the way the code now defines natural ground covers. It's native plants, it's decomposed granite, it's I'd have to
Oh, and
look.
that's
There's a whole
considered,
list of them. But it wouldn't be, they could replace artificial grass with that, but the aim of this is to actually replace natural grass because it requires irrigation.
so the word natural means gravel or pebbles.
Plants or, yeah,
Okay, I understand.
yeah.
And maybe we need to be a little more specific in what types of ground cover.
Yep, we can definitely clarify that word natural. And I saw a couple hands go up and then back down, so please re-raise them if you still had a comment. And then Jeff mentioned in the chat that retroactive approaches to rainwater harvesting may require a lot of earth moving for better retention. So we definitely have to be encouraged and working with HOAs versus requiring.
Yeah, I meant if if you're gonna, what you were talking about, you want to have a depression or you want to have part of your lawn below street level so the water doesn't all just go out into the street. That where I am, everything drains out into the street. That would actually involve quite a bit of earth moving. I mean, what you want to do is, what you said is good. That's a good idea, but retroactively, that would be kind of a mess where I am. That would be a lot of earth moving.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think maybe Rachel, you brought up last time that watershed management can sometimes help with that as well and offer rebates. So we definitely, when we get to the partnerships one, want to make sure that they're covered because they seem like a great resource to help with some of this. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so I'm going to move us down. Oh, Andy, sorry. Oh, go for it. Oh, and Andy, you're muted.
Still muted.
Oh, Andy, you're still muted if you can. There you go.
Okay. All right. Sorry about the starts and stops there. On P13, I also, yes, found the wording confusing, but that was discussed, so that's good. On P18, I understand that Rosa had an experience that was frustrating, and I empathize with that. But having lots of visible water features all over the place, I've been to Gilbert, near, around Phoenix. It's ridiculous. It's lovely, but I mean, to have all that water flowing around, even if they're small water features, but anyway, I think it's the right direction to, if not prohibit, discourage lots of ornamental water features, all over the place. That's not going to help. I guess those were the two things that I wanted to just add my 2 cents worth. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And Rosa, to your point, it's not maybe impacting water efficiency or conservation the most, but maybe the only other option would be to loosen the requirements because they're already there and they already prohibit. And I don't know if we'd want to start loosening up any type of water requirements.
Well, I bring it up too, because as you well know, the Vistosa community vociferously requested that the pond be brought back. That was once part of our irrigation pond, but re-envisioned as something that would be, that would be part of the preserve. And the arguments that were made was that we have an ordinance against that. But this was a golf course and it used way more water when it was a golf course. And we have 45 holes of golf in Ora Valley, and 9 of them are drinking water irrigated. So I guess it sticks in my craw that doesn't bother the town, but a pond does. And so I guess I look at water conservation differently. Obviously, you don't want a fountain on every corner. That's dumb. But I think that sometimes well-placed water features and conservation that really has a lot of focus on actual usage everywhere else can create the best of both worlds. And the reason that the community wanted the pond is because there are communities with ponds. Someone was telling me about one the other day, El Rio or something, but I went to Canoa Ranch, and I think that, it's not an obnoxious use of water because it's well placed and it's well used, and it's used by, animals and people to enjoy. And, so that's my point. My point is a good water policy should focus on usage. And until we get rid of some of the golf we have, which is going to be incredibly difficult, I don't think anybody should be pointing fingers at a community that's been through hell because we lost golf. It cost my family personally more than $35,000 because we had to solve the problem ourselves. So it sticks in my craw because the people yelling the loudest are the people who have lush green grass behind their homes, because there's no ordinance about removing turf in Ora Valley, which uses way more water than a pond. So I guess that's my point. If we're serious about water conservation, if that's the seriousness, then you have to look at the amount of water. And that's my point. So, and I'm sorry I get so irritated about it, but I have seen all weekend long people lambasting that pond, and it's mean-spirited, it's nasty. We're trying to bring something back to this community because this community has been ravaged. And some of the people doing the lambasting live on a town-owned golf course with green grass that gets millions and millions and millions of gallons of water used on it every single year. So that's my point. My point is, if we're going for water conservation and sustainability, then we have to look at usage, not just vessel.
Okay. Thank you, Rosa. And we can also look at the language there so it's clear what ornamental water features is as well, because that might not be clear to everyone of what the meaning of that. That is definitely a zoning jargon term. Cheryl?
Looking at P21, remove existing and prohibit new installation of ornamental natural grass at town facilities, which excludes sports fields, golf courses, and other recreational areas. I know where we're going with that because of being on this commission or committee, whatever you want to call us. But if I was reading that as an ordinary citizen in Ora Valley, I'd say, well, the town isn't really doing anything, you know, because those are other recreational areas I would assume would be parks. And that's exactly where all of this water is going, to those three things. So I don't know how to fix it, but it almost seems like, knowing we've had comments on the survey itself about banning use of potable water on golf courses, et cetera. It's, I think that could be a little bit troublesome, so.
And I know part of it was also trying to take, you're right, what we heard from the survey was to ban potable water use on the golf courses. And then through this group, you guys did make some good points of, well, you can't just cut off the water because then it dies. And then you're left with a whole nother issue. So would like to further discuss P21, because I do hear you. We are excluding probably most the ornamental grass in that the town owns. So maybe it needs to be reworded differently. And not looking for maybe solutions. I know it's hard to wordsmith on the fly, but further direction from you guys would be really helpful. And then we can definitely look at the wording. Andy?
Yeah, I'm pondering that quantification of how much water a golf course uses, and it's not only the green grass, their natural turf, but they have irrigation ponds, both of which do, look pleasant and do involve a certain amount of water. And so if a community doesn't have the grass, might it be somewhat acceptable for them to have a pond to increase the livability of that neighborhood? Anyway, I'm just kind of thinking about, is there a way we can get wording in here that encourages us to look at kind of the per capita or community or development, let's say, usage of water. And, if they want to use it on grass, we might say we want to discourage that. But if they want to have a small pond or what would be another example, a water, not a decorative water feature, but let's say like we have at Naranja Park, where there's sort of a playground, water used in the playground, for kids to cool off in.
The splash
I
pad.
guess if any of those ideas carefully looked at their water budget and could show that it was being recycled or something that was responsible, it could be worth that enhancement to the community and the neighborhood and the property values and everything. Not sure how to exactly work that in here, but
I think that goes along with Rosa's comments earlier. So maybe we can fit that into looking at the largest water users and ways that I think we can use some of what you just said, Andy, as well, to kind of add some more teeth to that one, because it would be kind of looking at not the
I guess
vessel the
I'm
water's
also,
being used, but how
so
much
yeah,
water
I'm
is being
also
used.
thinking about the parity of neighborhood to neighborhood,
Yep,
some getting to use lots of water and others.
that's my point, because
Yeah.
what we were told was all the reclaimed water is already being used. We don't have any left for Rancho Vistoso. And that stuck up a red flag, in my opinion. Okay, well, then those other neighborhoods have to use less and we have to share the water. And so that's my point. My point is, if you get to focus on the vessel, then you don't get to focus on the bigger issue. And that is, if you deny a community discretionary water use, you're affecting the value of that community. Because I guarantee you my house would be worth more if that golf course didn't die. I'm looking at devastation out my back every day. And I've worked really hard for the last 7 years to try to bring about some change there. But it's expensive, and it's really funny because Mike Ford, the guy that helped us buy the property, and he actually told me recently that the smartest thing the town could have done was save the golf course. It would have been so much less expensive than what we're going through to revegetate it, because it's like $20 million to revegetate that land. So what Andy said is true. It's if we're going to go forward in the next 10 years and we're going to have discretionary water use, not just, potable water for showers and cooking and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to use water, for things like fields and golf courses and whatever, there has to be some parity, some fairness, in the way we access that water as communities. And yeah, so we've got to look at ways to reduce the turf, because we have a lot of turf in Oro Valley for 36 square mile community, because we have a lot of golf courses here. Not just the ones the town owns, but we have a lot of turf in Oro Valley. So anyway, I mean, that's what I was getting at, that going forward, people don't want you to use it on golf, but really what the bigger issue is how can we be fair and not devastate property values and, solve this problem? Because it is a big problem. The town-owned golf courses, should they be removed, have to be revegetated in a park setting. And that would be astronomically expensive. You're talking $20-30 million to do that, to remove that water source. So anyway.
Thank you, Rosa. And then we're going to go to Rachel.
Someone had asked about this on the first section, but it also came to mind looking at P17 about conducting water audits. Is there anything in terms of specifically also around what we've been talking about with golf courses, or just like the town's largest users, for example? Does there exist already something about targeting like specific numbers to target for reductions, especially around potable water use? Does that exist? And if not, is that something that we could feed into potentially this section or the previous one?
I don't think, well, let me ask Peter first if there's current numbers. I know there's current strategies or requirements. I don't know if there's current numbers. Peter?
Yeah, so with respect to uh, water audits, we approach it two ways. One, utilizing WaterSmart when folks have alarms that are set. That's one way, residents or customers can monitor their own usage. And when they see abnormal usage that they don't understand, very often they'll call the utility and ask for help. And we have staff that's what the water audit is. It'll go to their house, troubleshoot the meter. There's some things we can do to figure out where the leak is, or if there is a leak, where is it? So we help the customers that way. That's one part of our water audit. So that's the customer notifying us we're using more water than we should be, and we don't know why. The second pronged approach to water audits is even for those residents and customers that haven't signed up for WaterSmart and don't have alerts set, we run an algorithm, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that looks at all of the consumption, and we just ping for, we know what irregular use looks like. One is if we see continuous use for a 24-hour period, if we see certain consumption, say it's just a 1 hour period, but really high consumption, we get notified or we get an alert, and then we reach out to the customer and say, hey, did you know you've had water consumption for 24 hours straight? Or yesterday you used 2,000 gallons in a 1 hour period. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, we emptied our pool and we're refilling it, or no, we didn't know that. So we'll go out to the customer's home and do a water audit, and if there's a leak, help them find the leak. So with water audits, there's the two-pronged approach. One is the customer reaches out to us and says that we think we have a problem, and the other prong is we have an algorithm monitoring all of our customers' usage, and not really, like, we don't target anybody per se, but we're just looking for what obviously looks like something that isn't natural behavior for typical customer.
Thank you.
So we do that now, and we're experimenting with expanding our algorithm to look for other uses that aren't typical for a residential customer, and looking at developing algorithms for our commercial customers. That's a little more challenging because we know what residential consumption looks like, but we haven't done a bunch of different commercial classifications, and nailing that down is a little tougher. But that's the expansion side, is expanding our understanding how our residents, our residential customers use water, and expanding on those models, and then carrying that over to the commercial side.
Thanks. I think that's really helpful. I think what I was getting more at, and what I think I misunderstood water audit to be something like the town would go to, say, commercial users and get a full understanding of their structure, but that does not seem to be the case. So, yeah.
If the customer comes to us and says, we'd really like to do something about our water, it's never about water consumption. It's always the water bill. So it's not consumption per se, although obviously your bill is tied to consumption. It's how can we get our water bill to be less? But we'll respond to the customer reaching out to us, because we don't look at a commercial business and say, well, that McDonald's is using too much water. We don't know what too much water really is per se for a commercial business.
Thank you, Peter. And Rachel, I don't know if this is what you were getting at, but I think we'll definitely need to revise the one about how we're working with our largest water users and try to add some more teeth to it, which may not, we wouldn't want to put a number in the plan, like reduce their water use by a percentage, because it is going to be a case by case basis, but maybe it is a little bit more measurable or like impactful by adding something about like, I think Rosa used establish parameters or measurements, a goal for folk to help reduce that. And then we have Keith and Andy.
All right, so adding on to what Peter was talking about, I guess I have a question. So I know the audits you do are great. They're kind of, I guess, sort of reactive and sort of proactive and reactive at the same time. But when I think about a water audit, I think about somebody coming in and helping me understand where I could reduce it. So like different kind of water heater, low flow shower heads, low gallon per flush toilets, you know, collecting water, et cetera, et cetera. So I know the city of Tucson offers free audits, and I had one done at my house, and it educated me, and we reduced our bill a bit. So I'm just trying to understand, do you offer that now? And if you don't, I would encourage that we do that in the future, and that's going to save a lot of water, just everybody's house, if they had a way to get free audits.
Yeah, Keith, all of our water audits to our customers, they're all free of charge. And I mean, we do water audits every day to, you know, both residential and commercial customers. It's free of charge.
Okay, I guess that your previous explanation, I didn't understand that. I mean, I understand how you're monitoring it, monitoring usage.
Yeah, so I
Just
mean,
trying to
it's if you call in and say, hey, I just want to know, am I using water efficiently? We'll come out. If you call and say, my water bill seems high, is there something I can do? We'll come out and do a water audit. If, you know, WaterSmart says I used a bunch of water, but I didn't do anything differently, we'll come out and do a water audit. And then there's the non-request side where we're monitoring the whole system. We see things that look weird, and that's when we reach out to the customer.
I understand.
So what we're really working on is growing our, I think we got the customer coming to us asking for help side handled really well. And now we're working on what are the metrics for us going to the customer saying we think you have a problem. Because bear in mind, we have no desire to be the water police. I have a very strong kind of an ethic of, if you want to use the resource however you see fit, as long as you're willing to pay for it, you know, I don't like telling people how to live their life. But I don't want, I'm not interested in being a heavy-handed totalitarian, you know, water provider. We're here to educate, we're here to help. And I mean, the greatest tool we have for conservation is our tiered commodity rate. Other codes, yeah, whatever, policies, whatever. You know what, the biggest hammer, if I could say that, is our tiered commodity rate. You're in tiers 3 and 4, you're taking an absolute beating. Unless you're just like lighting cigars with $100 bills, you don't want to be in tiers 3 and 4.
Right.
But that's our greatest conservation tool right there. And we're always, if you notice, last year, we really bumped up the commodity rate in tiers 3 and 4, just because that's what really curbs the behavior.
I guess I have one follow on then. When you do these audits, do you offer products to people like low flow shower heads, low flow heads for their sinks and faucets?
Sure, we'll let them know what's available. You know, we try to be cautious about promoting, you know, specific type products, but if we saw a 19 sixties toilet that, you know, when you flushed it, it pulled a vacuum in the room because it used like
Mhm.
8 gallons. You might say, hey, you know, you can upgrade your toilet to to something
Right.
different.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Keith and Peter. And maybe what we can do for everyone is uh, make sure it's clear about water audits because there does seem to be some confusion of what that means. So we can work on that language. Andy?
Yeah, that's basically my point I wanted to make too on P17. Conducting water audits, you know, just with those words there, you could just kind of do anything and check it off. But if we would add something to that to say, in order to identify unusual usage, and maybe also that second part, provide consulting or something on how to, on opportunities to further reduce, then that would be much more useful, it seems, as an action. So anyway, just maybe capture some of the previous discussion in that fuller
Great.
description of P17.
Malini,
Yes.
may I offer, you know, something along the lines of, these aren't perfect words, bear in mind, but the sentiment is, continue developing water monitoring tools to assist, you know, abnormal water consumption kind of thing. Like basically continue our work with developing the tools that identifies, you know, abnormal water use so we can, you know, we can proactively go to our customers and say, hey, something doesn't look right here.
Thank you, Peter. And we
Great.
definitely want to capture your current efforts to establish metrics for customers. So I think we can reword that one. Okay, Jeff and then Cheryl.
Yeah, maybe that was just said here, but I mean, the conducting the water audits thing, I think I have a question about how is that advertised? I mean, I think Water Smart is really great because you can say, well, okay, we did this weekend and look what happened. And also if you've got a leak, but is that well advertised? And I'm saying that now I'm thinking maybe it's on the water bill every month and I don't even look at it because I have auto pay. And so I don't, you know, I just check the amount. I mean, expanding that to really getting the community educated about this, because I think if people just saw, oh, what just happened here? I didn't really, you know, 100 gallons just went away this afternoon. What did we do? And if they thought about it, it might be that, well, yeah, maybe that toilet flushing and running is something I want to look into. But I mean, I'm just thinking about expanding that into really outreach, but maybe that's already there and I just miss it because I've got auto pay for my water bill.
That's a good point. We could definitely, when we get to our next column, we have a few more goals, policies, and actions relating to outreach and education. So we can definitely add stuff in there too to make sure we're continually promoting the water audit. But Peter, maybe just for Jeff's and the group's knowledge now, how do you currently promote that there's that service available?
So, Malini, you know, we have a notes section in our water bill where we put notes on things. Now, it's not every month that we mention that. It depends, you know, what time of year we're in. But water bills, we have our quarterly newsletter. Literally, like, I mean, at least once a year when I'm at the dais in front of council, it's in our executive report. We put it in the Vista. Now, one of the things we have started doing is we realize that there's quite a few folks that don't receive a paper bill, so they might not even see our quarterly newsletter. So, Jeff, I'm kind of curious, is in the last month or two, did you get an email from us that provided a link to our quarterly newsletter?
I did, yes, I did, in fact, but I also I get my bills electronically, and I just check the bottom just to make sure that I don't have a leak. But I did get the email, yes, that's correct.
So
Yeah.
our quarterly newsletters really will provide a lot of information, and we realized,
Yeah,
I mean, we know that we weren't reaching a third of our customers because of the auto bill. So we did develop a method that for the folks that are on auto pay, that we can send out an email to all of them, providing them a link to that newsletter. So I'm glad you got that.
yes, yeah, I did, and I guess, yeah, that's, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're ahead of me on this, but I think outreach would be great because it's free, it's easy to understand. I think it really works well, and I think it could change a lot of people's motivation for using water.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And yeah, we can make sure that's included in terms of the outreach. Cheryl?
Just have a quick question for Peter, since we're lucky enough to have him on here tonight. Back before we did the new irrigation systems on the 2 courses on La Cañada, I know Troon was complaining. It was actually Troon at that point, so we're going back. They were saying that they had to fix a lot of leaks. So my question is, have you seen less water usage since we've replaced both those systems there?
Simple answer is no. You know, if I was just looking at the consumption, you know, we track consumption every month. And I remember that comment that was made a few years ago about one of the justifications for redoing the irrigation system was it would save money by having to replace breaks, and it'll also save water. I think, you know, the water savings, because of the consumption that turf irrigation has, I think it's in the decimal dust. I couldn't pick out the water savings if you asked me to. I don't, when I look at the data, I don't see anything that says, wow, there it is. I don't see that. If it's there, it's, I mean, even if it was 1%, I wouldn't see it, just because of the natural variation in their annual consumption.
I think they said also that they would be able to adjust which areas were being watered and things like that. Is that actually being done, or did they just install the system and let it go?
Cheryl, I'm not really, I don't know much about how they operate and how they irrigate. I couldn't answer that. I don't know. I don't know if they're more efficient. You know, when I look, like right now, I'm looking at the consumption. It looks like what it always has been. It's in the hunt, the range. I will tell you this: the town-owned golf courses do use significantly less water than the privately owned courses.
Okay.
So I mean,
Okay.
I would say they operate more efficiently, but I don't really know how they operate.
Okay. Well, thank you for your frankness on that.
Oh, well, of course.
Thank you. All right, so before we move on to the next section, I do want to focus everyone's attention to policy P3. So this is ways to help residents make some changes in their home if they want to. We specifically talked about gray water and tankless water heaters. Again, we wouldn't be requiring existing homeowners to do this, but it would be making sure they have more information to make that decision. Now with the building codes in P32, it would be making sure that new developments have the plumbing in place to be gray water ready. That isn't currently in our building codes. And then here's where some of the rebates and incentives are as well, as I think Keith pointed out, in terms of those appliances and fixtures like shower heads, toilets, things of that nature. And then Andy, we will get to more the section about Water Smart here in a minute, to make sure that we're making sure information is out there with regards to Water Smart. So this just focuses more on like the specific types of ways to make your homes more efficient. And the next section will talk about the outreach, partnerships, and also trying to increase usage of Water Smart. Jeff?
I'm wondering if you know, if this town, if the city has any information, maybe through permits of people that have, so our house, I mean, our house is 30 years old, but that people have retrofit for gray water. I mean, I'm thinking of capturing water from your washer instead of going in your clothes washer, instead of going into the sewer. Do we know? Do you have any information about how much engagement there is there, how much participation there is, and is it prohibitively expensive? You know what I'm talking about? I mean, if I had somebody come in, do people do that regularly in Oro Valley, and are they happy with it?
I don't have specific numbers. I do know what I've heard anecdotally, is that's one reason it was removed from the last building code update, is there were, and this was of course from like a developer standpoint, because they were trying to do it for all the homes, right, in a subdivision, that it just was cost prohibitive and wasn't being, they didn't think it'd be used much. So that's my understanding of why it was removed. But I'm not sure how many people are using it now or have retrofitted their homes to use it.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Keith, and then Rosa.
I mean, so I retrofitted my home, to capture water from our washing machine and feed a bunch of our fruit trees, so it works quite well. I bought it from Watershed Management. I think the whole kit was $350, and then I got a rebate on top of that of $250, I believe. And it's not hard to install. I can't imagine a plumber couldn't do it for, I don't know, $500 or less, but I did it myself because I can do that. But I'm just saying that it is available and it's not that hard to do, really.
Oh, that's great, Keith. Oh, glad to hear that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith.
Yep.
Rosa.
So I was glad to hear that. I was told it's the size of the property too. You have to have room and not other plumbing in the way. If you have a pool that has plumbing, and so you have to avoid that. And then so it's size of lot sometimes can be an issue, because I know I asked about it and there wasn't a really good place for it. But I think you should keep it in there for sure, and you know, even provide, you know, information on it or something, like, because I think like if there's kits or things available, or if there's information, providing the information might be helpful. And for Water Smart, I don't know how, I'll comment on that. I don't know how I found out about it, but I will say this. I was completely unaware of water consumption in the desert when I moved here, because I don't live in a desert where I come from. And every year I've had Water Smart, my water consumption has gone down every single year. So even if you aren't an efficient water, you know, user, if you can get that system, you start to like try to compete with yourself every year. You know what I mean? I may have even like caused my desert oak to be a little messed up this year because I don't think I watered it enough this winter. But I guess my point is, you know, that, and you also learn really fast where your water goes. I have a pool, I have a 20,000 gallon pool, and that is not where my water goes because the evaporation, especially in the winter, is not very high. But that landscaping is a killer. You know, and so I would have planted different things had I known. And as things die, I don't replace, you know, what died with something that needs as much water. So, and the other thing, is, with the gray water and with the Water Smart and with everything, and I think this was back on the first page, and I just thought of it, is, I just bought a vine, and the nursery I bought it from told me exactly how much water it needed. So if you know how much water something needs, you might not buy it, is my point. Because there are specific water requirements for specific plants. And that might be more helpful than just a generalized, you know, plant list, like a plant list that also provides the water required for that plant might be a way to get people not to plant certain things, that then they have to, you know, struggle with the water bill because, you know, you have to keep it alive. So, but yeah, so Water Smart, I don't know how I found out about it, but I do know, like I said, my water bill has, I think I've been on it 6 years, and my bill has come down every year, my actual month to month water usage. So it is definitely something, if we could, you know, figure out how I found out about it. I don't know. I do get a paper bill, even though I'm on auto. So maybe that's because it's been like 18 years. I don't think they don't give a paper bill out to somebody that does the auto deduct now. So that's helpful.
Thank you, Rosa. And I will say our plant list, you make a really good point. We do put, it's a scale of 1 to 3 on the water use. So some plants are a 1, which means you only have to water it like once a couple times a month. The 3s are you have to water it weekly. So we don't like specify how much water, but we do try to like specify what types. And then for new developments, if you're trying to use a bunch of plants that are a water use of 3, which is our higher water users, even though they're native and they're still considered low, you can only put those in certain areas where they will get more of that natural water. But we want to make sure that's maintained. So good point. All right, so not seeing hands up, I am going to move us over because your last comments went kind of right into our last area, which is about increasing awareness and education about water use and conservation, and then also pursue partnerships is on this one. So let's trying to get it all on the screen, but we may not be able to. But in terms of increasing water use, it is developing programs, workshops. So this is actually where we do have talking about working with HOAs, but we can add, oh, we do have reduced outdoor water use, but we can add rainwater harvesting here. So it's more specific. Working with, you guys talked about part-time residents and working with them to shut off their water, although many of them do. Making sure information is available. And then here's where we talk about Water Smart a little bit, of just continuing to promote it, to increase enrollment of Water Smart. And then you guys had a great idea of creating like an online dashboard so people can kind of see the community-wide water use by different types of users. And maybe it could be made into a competition, like Rosa said. And then in terms of partnerships, we do have the one about partnering and promoting resources like Watershed Management Group. Again, that's just an example, but we wanted to make sure we specified the one that you guys brought up a lot. So give everyone a moment to read. We're policy P4, all the actions under there. And then if you're able to navigate yourself, you can also look at goal Q and policy Q1. And then Andy, I see your comment, and maybe Peter, I don't know, maybe it was a question for Peter, but he mentioned that he does not see Water Smart on his monthly water utility bill. And Andy, did you mean you don't see it as something, it's not being promoted on your water bill?
Yeah, earlier there was a question about whether it is being promoted on the water bill or not, and looks to me like it's not.
Okay.
Now this is, anyway, I answered the question I was
Yeah,
asked.
no,
I do
yeah,
have another thing
appreciate
that
it.
I kind of wanted to mention.
Yeah.
This is probably too specific, but on the water bill, um, it shows my current usage and past year's usage. That's really useful, as Rosa mentioned. Um, another thing that I think could be inspiring maybe is to see average some other like median usage or some other benchmark besides my own. Let's say my household is the biggest user of water in the whole, the whole neighborhood or the whole town, but I'm doing better than last year. I guess that's okay, but it might be good if I was aware that I'm way out there, or I'm actually doing pretty good, better than average. I don't know. Maybe that would make people complacent, and maybe the data crunching would not be so easy, but some kind of benchmark or like, this is our target. That sounds maybe a little more totalitarian. But some reference like this is, average is not so good, but maybe medium. I'm sorry, it's too specific and I didn't mean to go on so long about it.
No, appreciate it, Andy. Yeah, maybe that's even something to work into that dashboard too, of like, rather than just having like single family homes, maybe it's single family home lots that are 7,000 square feet or something. Um, have to, not to add that to the action, but that specificity, but we could definitely work on the wording to get that the intent of wanting to be able to compare your usage to others of similar. Cheryl?
Well, I actually was thinking somewhat along those same lines as to on the dashboard, if there was an opportunity to put like some examples. Now, I know we don't know how many people live in each of the households, but if you could just have like maybe a little chart there that would show, okay, if you're a single person in a household, your goal should be this, and the same with 2 people, 3 people, 4 or more. It might, if people ever saw it, would maybe would incent them to conserve a little bit.
Yep.
And also, since I'm already talking, for P43, is there something that we do currently for new subscribers to give them any sort of information about, water usage in Oro Valley when they move here? Because that might be an opportunity to make people aware of this isn't a rainforest.
I know P43, that stems from the comments about even having like, let's say you go to a restroom at a park, if there was like a sign on the mirror that said like, turn the sink off or don't run water, or, just kind of those little reminders to folks, almost like employees must wash their hands, like those little things. But I don't know, Peter, when people join or become a customer of the water utility, do you give the information?
Yeah, so probably maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when a customer, comes in and they're a new resident, we provide them with a welcome letter, and it talks about Oro Valley, the utility, our water resources, how to read your bill. It talks about, living in the desert. And then we provide a lot of links for additional information. So we try to, because we realize, we have a lot of folks that'll come, east of the Mississippi, and that's a completely different lifestyle. And I'm overexpressing to make a point, but we do try to provide them some foundational information with a lot of links for further education on how we should be living in the desert.
Do most new residents actually come in to sign up? Because I think when I moved here, I just did it online.
Yeah, and even online, we'll email it to you. But no, we have actually quite a few folks to come into the office.
Yeah. Well, it might be worthwhile if they don't, of just emailing that information to them with the welcome letter.
Yeah, and then we will, if it's online, because, we try to get their contact information, and we'll email them, the welcome packet. How long ago was it that you moved here?
2006.
Okay, yeah, that was well before we started doing this.
Thank you. Keith?
As far as partnerships go, I see is, you got watershed management listed, which is awesome, but there are other organizations like Sustainable Tucson you might also want to partner with as well. That they're all about conserving everything that we do, including water and that we use. And they would actually come in and do some discussions and education sessions as well, so, anyway,
Yeah, we could definitely add a couple
just
more examples.
somebody else, besides them.
Yep. Thank you, Keith. I'm not seeing any more hands raised. Any other comments regarding outreach, awareness, and partnerships? It looks like most people are done reading. You can always go back. I am going to move us on. So our last area is I do want to check in with this group on the guiding principle. So again, on the left side, that is what we heard from residents over the past year. And it's really what gave the foundation and direction for this group in terms of our discussions. And then on the right-hand side is the actual guiding principle that aims to capture that information. So take a moment to read read this slide, but then please raise your hand if there's things that you think need to be clarified. If there's any additions to help better capture resident values or priorities. Rosa?
So I know that the residents, the last two was the two I'm focused on, wanted the reduction of potable water on turf. And then it kind of goes with expand the use of reclaimed. In the next 10 years, that's not likely to happen. So for the guiding principle, how would you handle that? I mean, the next 10 years, we'll have a one water concept where, reclaimed will, if there's any available, it'll be far less, because if Tucson is going to start using, processing. So that would be my only concern with those two guiding principles, because it more than likely will happen in the next during this time when this particular plan is in place, that we will not be having as much reclaimed water available. So meeting that one goal of reducing drinking water for irrigation, we may be using all the water may be drinking water. So that's my only concern. I realize what people were thinking when they filled out the survey, but as it applies to the plan going forward, I don't know how other people feel about it, but I think that maybe those guiding principles might not work, because I know I hear all the time, we should spend the $18 million to bring the reclaimed up to the golf course that uses the potable water, but that would not be a good return on investment if we wouldn't get, 30 years out of it. And if we're not even going to get 10, that's not a good, way of spending valuable, budget dollars. So I don't know how other people feel about it, but I think maybe that should be revised to just, reduce the amount of water used for irrigation and not expand the use of reclaimed if we're not going to be able to expand the use of reclaimed.
So my suggestion would be we capture those nuances in the goals and policies, which I think you guys kind of have in terms of expanding reclaimed, and leave it this way in the guiding principle, only because I do hear you, Rosa, and you're right. But I think, to your point, the general public isn't going to they may not know that aspect of it. So I think in terms of being able to reflect this back to the broader community, this reflects what was said, trying to explain that nuance that reclaimed and drinking water will be one and the same in the next 10 years may be difficult to do. So right now it is pretty specific, but it's at least very reflective of what we heard. And we can capture that more in the goals, policies, and actions, the hows would be my suggestion for the group. But point very well taken and as discussed with this group.
Maybe just remove the word expand, soften it a little,
Okay.
because we're not going to be able to expand reclaimed water. If anything, it'll be reduced. So maybe just, consider the use of reclaimed water instead of expanding it.
Yep. Other thoughts on the guiding principle? And while you guys are looking at it, Andy, you're very quick. Appreciate the comment in the chat. He said he registered on WaterSmart and that offers a comparison of water usage. So good resource. Okay, it looks like most people are done reading. I'm not seeing hands up. So does everybody with a head nod or thumbs up, are these goals, policies, actions, and guiding principle heading in the right direction? We'll definitely make some edits as you guys suggested. So head nod or thumbs up. Okay. So I do want to share just one final slide in terms of next steps. Just one moment. There we go. All right. Let me share it. Okay. So I do want to thank you all for all the meetings. So you guys accomplished a lot in 4 meetings. You created goals, policies, and actions for 3 different areas, sections in the 10-year plan. So environment, climate and energy, as well as water resources and conservation, which is a lot in 4 meetings. So kudos to all of you. Next steps, this will be our last meeting for the summer break. We will be though sending out an email next week that has what we're calling a 30% draft. And what this will be is it's a combination of all 4 different resident working groups' work. And it's reconciled in a manner where it is a comprehensive list of all the goals, policies, and actions that each group worked on. So there is some overlap between some of the groups, which is great, but it will be all kind of reconciled so that you're really reading a little bit of a more uniform document. We will be sending that out and as well with a tool to get your feedback on, because some of the revisions, like the ones we'll make after tonight, you'll have another chance to comment on those with that 30% draft. After the 30% draft goes out and gets reviewed, staff will continue to work over the summer to create basically a complete draft of the plan. That's where all the bells and whistles will be. So when you see the 30% draft, don't be shocked. There's no pictures or images. It's pretty much just the wording. We will be doing that over the summer to put together a complete draft of the plan. So that will have the introduction sections, all the graphics, maps, and photos. We'll then be asking everyone to reconvene in August to look at that complete draft of the plan before it goes out to the broader community for review. So with that, I do again want to thank you all. And if you have any further comments or questions, please raise your hand now. Not seeing any. Well, thank you and have a good night. We'll end a little bit early this evening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.